Mr. Nasa Dibuque is the National Information Officer of the United Nations Information Center in Manila. Prior to this appointment, she had managed the communications program of several non-government organizations in the Philippines. She has also worked as a campaign strategist for the NGOs involved in policy reform such as agrarian and asset reform, participatory development planning and implementation, human rights promotion, and gender mainstreaming. She had been a consultant in communications for development programs of international development agencies such as FAO, IFAD, and the Ford Foundation. She holds a bachelor's degree in communication from the University of the Philippines in Diliman. So help me welcome Ms. Teresa Dibuque.
Thank you. Thank you for that kind introduction. I didn't know that Seraphine still had that on file. Okay, so good afternoon to all of you. I would like first of all to thank the National Association of UNESCO Clubs in the Philippines for inviting the United Nations Information Center Manila and my colleague from the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, Mr. Monroy, to the first of your three-part series of World Heritage Education and Encounter Workshops. So I'm likewise grateful for the opportunity to return to this beautiful place, which I visited several years ago to go on a trek to the heritage site. And I'm happy to note that the heritage site has been preserved for you young people and first-timers here to appreciate. When Mr. Enares earlier was detailing how many heritage sites he had visited and enjoyed, I was thinking to myself that I hope that when I get the opportunity and the resources, or all of us, my wish is for all of us, that if we get the opportunity to go on such a pilgrimage, these heritage sites would still be standing and in their present condition. Because for most of the world's heritage sites, the natural enemies are time and neglect. In certain places like Syria, where fiery clashes between government troops and rebels had recently resulted in the burning down of a medieval marketplace, a heritage site in Aleppo, civil war and conflict pose another kind of threat. Well, we could expect the incidence of such cases to rise in the future because of the instability of our society. There is another kind of threat that looms in our horizon. Now, this threat is more worrying. Why? Because it is indifferent to national boundaries, it is indifferent to politics, to religion, to ideology. It is a mindless bringer of destruction. It cannot be bargained with, it cannot be reasoned with. It will destroy everything and anything in its path. This threat is climate change. Now, I'm reminded of an old movie starring Kevin Costner. Yes, thank you. I thought that you were too young to remember the movie. The movie is Waterworld. Now, the movie tells of a future where all land masses had been submerged under the ocean. At the time that this movie was shown, the future it portrays seemed impossible. But recently, with the unprecedented speed at which the Arctic Sea has been melting, causing the sea level to rise, threatening small island states, I was reminded of Waterworld, and I realized that this scenario is frighteningly probable. The gigantic tsunami that engulfed certain countries in South and Southeast Asia a few years back, the flooding that submerged huge tracts of Pakistan's land under a swamp for months. And let's not go any further. The flash floods that hit Cagayan de Oro and Iligan last December. These are all reminders that Waterworld is not just a cautionary tale, but a portent of things to come. the world's heritage sites located in lowland areas, especially near coastal areas. Trying to protect these from a tsunami is like throwing a protective arm around the sand castle as the high tide approaches. It is useless, it is vain. So no amount of money, no miracle of engineering could stop the ocean from claiming our heritage sites. The heritage sites which are the repository of our history, our traditions, our culture, our memories. In a few minutes, these beloved sites would become ghostly apparitions at the bottom of the sea. Now you're probably thinking, well, the rice terraces of the Philippine Cordilleras cannot be in such a vulnerable state because they are so high up in altitude. But we forget that there is more than one kind of extreme weather event associated with climate change. The same global warming that melts the Arctic ice, causing flooding, also envelops countries near the equator in withering heat, causing drought. Okay? The drought, which cuts deep, deep furrows in the land, in the same way that, well, too much exposure to the sun would leave wrinkles on a young woman's face. Okay? Drought so merciless that no vegetation could survive above ground. Imagine that kind of drought settling on our beloved rice terraces. The fight to stop climate change will be the defining battle of our time, because its outcome will determine whether the planet, our planet Earth, could continue to sustain life as we know it. Given the enormity of the impact of climate change, you might think that this problem, this challenge, is beyond your capacity to address it. This is a job only for governments and international organizations such as the UN. But I would say to you that your actions and decisions every single day are either mitigating climate change or hastening its advance. How? This is what UNIC and UNIDO have come here to try to explain. The single biggest emitter of the greenhouse gases that cause global warming is fossil fuel-based energy. The energy that powers our industries, the energy that fuels our cars, the energy that cools or heats up our rooms, lights up our houses, and runs your computers. Unfortunately, fossil fuel-based energy is dirty energy because of the gigatons of carbon that it emits into the atmosphere. No one would deny that we all need energy, dirty or not. Industrializing giants like China and India insist that they are entitled to the same fossil fuel generated economic growth that countries like the US and other rich countries in Europe have achieved to such great success. And this is exactly the reason that the climate change conferences organized by the UN year after year have always failed to secure concrete commitments from both developed and developing countries to make significant cuts in their carbon emissions. Rich countries like the US, for example, will always insist that it will cut its emissions only if the BRICS do the same. By BRICS, I'm referring, of course, to Brazil, Russia, India, China. On the other hand, the BRICS are adamant that they should be left alone to do their business as usual until they have attained the same level of development that the rich countries enjoy. Only then would they consider making cuts. Now, even us, non-delegates, know that this quid pro quo will never be achieved. People say that you can never be too thin or too rich. Industrializing countries will continue raising the bar for wealth creation. And since investing in clean energy does not offer immediate payoffs, the economic wealth creation will continue to be done at the expense of the environment. The problem seems to defy solution. Nonetheless, UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon decided the global community cannot stop trying to find an answer. There is this movie, you might think this is off tangent, but it's gonna make sense. There is this other movie I saw, it's about a few people trapped in this flimsy building while vampires try to bite or claw their way in. So I forget the title, but the others, the majority, just sat down and gave up. But one of them decided that he would fight. So they asked this person, why don't you just accept your fate? There are just too many of them. And he answered, we have to try because we have no choice. Fighting climate change, again I say, will be the defining battle of our time. It seems to be unwinnable, so why even try? Because we have no choice if we as a species are to survive. To stop trying implies something else. It implies that we have decided to continue to wage war on our environment. This is a war we cannot win because nature will fight back by dying. Mr. Ban Ki-moon and the UN General Assembly declared the year 2012 as the International Year of Sustainable Energy for All. In his vision statement, which was published in November of 2011, he said that this task is not just for policymakers, it is our shared responsibility. He is calling for a clean energy revolution. Now, harnessing solar and wind energy is obviously out of our league. But simple actions and decisions like using fluorescent energy-saving light bulbs instead of the incandescent kind, doing that is something that requires no law to exact our compliance. Or turning off lights that you do not need, powering down your computers when you decide to watch television. My son multitasks. While the TV is on, he's on the computer. So I keep asking him, just turn off one while you're concentrating on the other. But that's what he does, and I guess that's what young people do. No, but these habits we have to unlearn. Also, we can choose to use gasoline or diesel with a higher mix of ethanol for our cars in order to encourage companies to produce more biofuels, which emit less greenhouse gases. I'm betting that some of you, well, I may be wrong, but some of you might have forgotten to turn off the lights in your room before you came to this conference call. Yeah, this indifference to the wasteful use of energy is something that we all need to overcome because it's become ingrained into us. That, oh, it's okay, I'm paying for the hotel anyway, so let them worry about the electricity bill. But we are contributing to the emission of carbon. Our carbon footprint is getting larger and larger. Now, the art competition that UNIC Manila and UNIDO are undertaking, sorry, that's my phone, seeks to inspire young people to make common cause with the global effort to stop climate change and save our world by transitioning to sustainable or clean or renewable energy, whichever way you want to call it. We invite you. I don't know how many of you are participating in the poster design contest on the 13th. We invite you to make the dream of sustainable energy for all your own and to express this dream through art. There will be a cash prize, of course, a trophy, and the cachet of winning a UN competition. But what is unique about this contest is that all your entries, whether they win or not, will be printed and they will be brought to Doha, Qatar, the host of this year's Climate Change Conference, the 18th Climate Change Conference. You may not think that your artwork would make a difference among these hard-nosed delegates who come to these conferences prepared to concede nothing. But we have to hang on to the belief that these delegates are also ordinary people who are capable of decency and common sense. So when the world's leaders and the international media gather in Doha this December, they will see your artwork fluttering from a literal tree of dreams. You're going to install a tree there. We have secured permission to hold a side event at the 18th COP, Conference of Parties. So we will install a tree there and we will hang your artwork from its branches. And all the rest that don't fit in the tree will be strung together and surround the Qatar National Convention Center. Okay, so when these delegates see your artwork, your rendition of your dream of sustainable energy for all, they might realize that it might be their own children talking to them. And thus, in a supreme act of self-interest, they may very well decide that saving the earth by stopping climate change, though politically difficult, is worth the effort because it is the only possible choice that makes sense if their children and they themselves can have a future that makes sense. Thank you very much for your attention. And I will leave it to my UN colleague, Ted, to talk about how concretely the UN promotes sustainable energy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Teresita Libuque of the United Nations Information Officer, Manila. Okay, so at this point in time, we would like to give you a short